People say betrayal hurts most when it's quiet. I used to believe that until the day I opened a breakup email while rockets were flying overhead. My name is Ethan Cole, 38 years old, Staff Sergeant in the United States Army. I was 4 months into a brutal deployment in Kabul, battling heat, dust, and enemy fire, when my whole world came crashing down through the cold glow of my laptop screen. The email was from Hannah, my wife of 9 years. The subject line said it all. Let's be adults about this. At first, I thought it had to be a mistake. Maybe a newsletter, maybe some spam, maybe a joke from one of the guys trying to get a laugh. But it wasn't. It was real. And it was devastating. Just 3 sentences. That's all she gave me. She said she had filed for divorce. She said she had moved her new boyfriend into our home. She said she had already drained our joint bank account. I stared at the screen, unable to move for a moment, feeling like the whole tent was closing in around me. Then, without a word, I closed the laptop, walked to the communal showers, and let the cold water hammer against my face until I could finally breathe again. No shouting, no breakdown, just a heavy, hollow silence inside my chest. When I returned to my bunk that night, I opened my laptop again and typed one word in reply. Understood. No anger, no begging, no questions, just quiet acceptance. Wilson, my bunkmate, glanced over from his battered copy of Lonesome Dove and asked, "You good, man?" I nodded once. "Yeah, just stuff back home. In the Army, you learn quickly that some things aren't meant to be pried into." Wilson nodded once and went back to his book. No judgment, no sympathy, just the unspoken understanding that sometimes life punches you in the gut, and all you can do is stand up and keep moving. Lying awake that night, listening to the distant hum of generators and the occasional thud of artillery in the distance, I realized something. I wasn't going to be the man who broke down over this. I wasn't going to let her betrayal define me. If Hannah thought she could destroy me with a 3-sentence email, she didn't know me at all. I made myself a promise right then and there. A silent vow stitched together out of anger, pain, and something sharper. She might have started this war, but I was going to be the one to finish it. The next morning, while most of the guys were lining up for coffee or checking messages from home, I sat quietly in the corner, staring at my laptop. Not at Hannah's email anymore. That was done. I opened the banking app for our joint account, holding my breath for a second longer than necessary. The balance glared back at me. Almost nothing left. 9 years of saving, scraped away like it had never mattered. My first instinct was rage, sharp and raw, but it fizzled out almost as quickly as it sparked. What settled in its place was something colder, steadier, more dangerous. I wasn't going to send angry texts. I wasn't going to leave desperate voicemails. I wasn't going to give Hannah the satisfaction of seeing me lose control. No, I was going to handle this like a soldier handles a mission, quiet, strategic, deliberate. I opened another tab and logged into a private account I had set up a year earlier. Back when I first noticed small things changing with Hannah. Things like the way she stopped asking about my day, the sudden late nights at work that didn't quite add up, the guarded way she held her phone. I didn't want to believe it then. I wanted to think it was just stress or loneliness or something that would pass. But my gut told me otherwise. And the Army taught me a long time ago, when your gut speaks, you listen. Setting up a separate account, storing important documents off-site, squirreling away a little money. They weren't acts of distrust. They were acts of survival. Now, they were the only reason I had anything left. I typed a quick email to Mike Andrews, a buddy from my first deployment who had since traded his fatigues for a law degree. Mike had a reputation for handling ugly, complicated divorces, the kind where one wrong move could cost you everything. My message was simple. Need help. Urgent. Discreet. 15 minutes later, he replied, secure line. Call me tonight. That was Mike. No wasted words. No wasted time. With that set in motion, I turned my attention to the next step. I mentally reviewed the contents of the storage unit I had rented back home. Birth certificate, deed to the house, insurance paperwork, everything important, everything that proved what was mine, tucked away safely under my name. Hannah couldn't touch that, at least not legally. But a voice in the back of my mind warned me. Hannah wasn't playing by legal rules anymore. She had made that clear. By noon, I had the rough outline of a plan. It wasn't fueled by bitterness or revenge. It wasn't even about Hannah anymore. It was about securing my future. It was about making sure that when this was over, I wouldn't be standing in the ashes of a life someone else had burned down. While the guys joked around the mess hall, playing cards and trading stories about home, I sat in silence, mapping out every move like I was planning an operation behind enemy lines. Every asset, every account, every potential vulnerability. This wasn't just about heartbreak. It was about survival. And if there was one thing I knew better than anyone, it was how to survive. That night, after everyone else had drifted off to restless sleep, I lay in my bunk, staring up at the dark canvas ceiling, thinking about every small sign I had ignored. I thought about the times Hannah didn't answer my calls, blaming bad reception or being too busy with work. I thought about the late-night texts she used to send, short, sweet, eager, and how they had turned into cold, obligatory one-liners. I thought about the sudden new friends she had started mentioning, names I had never heard before, plans that didn't include me, weekends that were suddenly girls' trips without warning. Back then, I chalked it up to stress, loneliness, the natural drift that can happen when two people live on different sides of the world too often. I made excuses for her because I wanted to believe she was still the woman I had married, the woman who kissed me at the airport and told me to come home safe. But in the cold clarity of that night, I realized something I hadn't wanted to admit. Hannah hadn't just drifted away from me. She had been making a new life without me for a long time. I pulled out my laptop again, not to check emails this time, but to access the home security system I had installed a year earlier. She probably forgot I still had remote access. Part of me didn't want to look. Part of me already knew what I would find. But I clicked through anyway, watching the footage buffered through a shaky satellite connection. There he was, a man I had never seen before, parking in my driveway like he owned it, walking into my house, letting my dog out into the yard, wearing my hoodie, drinking from my coffee mug. And there was Hannah, laughing in the kitchen I had remodeled with my own hands during my last leave, leaning into him like they had been living this life for months. Maybe they had, maybe longer. My hands didn't shake. My heart didn't race. There was only a cold, steady hum in my veins, the kind of focus that came before a firefight. I wasn't just fighting for my pride anymore. This was my home, my life, my future they were desecrating. And I wasn't going to let it slide. I started making a list on a scrap of paper pulled from my field notebook. Call Mike, secure legal advice. Check Virginia loan documents. Ensure she couldn't sell the house without me. Review pension protections. Make sure my retirement couldn't be touched. Set up alerts on all bank and investment accounts. Monitor for any unusual activity. Secure all important documents. Verify every signature. This wasn't just a reaction. It was a battle plan. Hannah might have thought I would be too far away, too helpless, too broken to do anything about what she had done. But she forgot one important thing. You don't leave a soldier behind. Not even yourself. Especially not yourself. As I closed the laptop and tucked the list under my pillow, I felt something I hadn't felt in days. A flicker of control, a sense of direction. Hannah thought she had won. She thought she had written the final chapter of our story. But the truth was, the real story was only just beginning. And this time, I was the one holding the pen. The next morning, before my shift started, I called Mike on a secure line. The connection crackled slightly, but his voice was sharp, direct, and exactly what I needed to hear. I walked him through everything, the email, the emptied accounts, the man living in my house, the footage from my security cameras. Mike didn't interrupt. He just listened. When I finished, he took a breath and said, "Ethan, this isn't just a messy divorce. It's fraud. It's theft. And depending on what else we find, it could be a whole lot worse for her." He laid out the basics for me. Contest the house if she tried to sell it, freeze any shared assets immediately, document everything, and above all, stay quiet. No angry emails. No confrontations. Let her think she's winning. Let her get comfortable. That's when she would make mistakes. By noon, Mike had already sent a formal notification to my bank, flagging the account for suspicious activity. He contacted a property attorney back home, filing a notice on the house title that would prevent any sale or refinance without my explicit approval. If Hannah or her boyfriend tried to move money or sell my home, alarms would start going off in the right places. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't dramatic. But it was effective. Every move was made quietly, like a hand tightening around something without letting it know it was already caught. In the days that followed, I kept my routine normal. I trained, I pulled guard shifts, I laughed at dumb jokes with the guys, but every spare moment, I checked the alerts Mike had set up. That's when the real horror started to unfold. Hannah hadn't just drained our account. She had started moving small amounts of money weeks before I deployed, trickling it away into an account I didn't recognize. When I dug deeper, the account was connected to the name of the man I had seen in my house. It wasn't just a one-time betrayal. It was a long, calculated operation. She had been planning my erasure long before I even boarded the plane to Kabul. I didn't react. I didn't message her. I didn't even let her know I was watching. I let her dig deeper, let her get bolder, because every transaction, every withdrawal, every signature she forged was another nail in her own coffin. The worst part wasn't even the money. It was realizing that the woman I thought I knew, the woman I had promised to love and protect, had looked at me leaving for war not with sadness, but with opportunity. To her, my deployment wasn't a sacrifice. It was a clearance sale. Late one night, after another long shift, I sat outside the tent, staring up at the endless desert sky, my boots planted firmly in the dirt, my list tucked safely in my pocket, and a calmness settled over me. I wasn't powerless. I wasn't broken. She might have started the betrayal, but now I was setting the terms. And when the dust finally cleared, she was going to find out exactly what it meant to cross a man who knew how to fight back. Patiently, strategically, and without ever needing to raise his voice. A few days later, during a rare break between patrols, I checked the security app again, mostly out of habit. I didn't expect anything new, but what I saw made me sit up straight on the edge of my bunk. There was a stranger at my house, a man in a blazer with a clipboard, walking through the front yard, taking pictures. I toggled to the interior cameras, and there he was again, pacing through my living room, inspecting the kitchen, snapping photos of the hardwood floors I had installed myself. Hannah wasn't with him, but it didn't take a genius to figure out what was happening. They were preparing to sell the house. At first, my heart hammered with panic. If they sold the house while I was overseas, there was a chance I could lose everything. But then I remembered Mike's warning. Stay calm. Stay strategic. I took screenshots of the footage and immediately forwarded them to him with a simple message. Looks like they're trying to sell. Mike called me within an hour. His voice was steady, businesslike. They can't sell it without your consent, Ethan. You're still protected under the VA loan, and we filed the notice at the county clerk's office. But we need to move fast to build a stronger case. He explained that if Hannah forged my signature again, or if they tried to push through a fraudulent sale, it would add more charges to the list, not just civil penalties but criminal ones. That night, instead of stewing in anger, I started gathering evidence. I pulled every email, every security feed clip, every bank statement showing suspicious activity. Mike coordinated with a private investigator back home, who began tailing the man from the real estate office. It didn't take long to find out his name, Daniel Spencer, a shady agent known for flipping houses fast, often working just inside the gray areas of the law. Worse, Mike uncovered a connection between Spencer and Hannah's new boyfriend. They had worked together before, more than once, selling houses way below market value and pocketing the difference. The betrayal cut deeper with every new discovery, but it also sharpened my focus. This wasn't just personal anymore. It was a full-blown operation, and I wasn't the first soldier they had targeted. The more we dug, the uglier it got. Spencer and Hannah's boyfriend had pulled this scheme on at least 2 other military families in the past. Men deployed overseas, women left behind and convinced to sell their homes under shady terms. It wasn't just betrayal. It was exploitation, preying on the trust and absence of those serving their country. Sitting alone in that dusty tent halfway across the world, I realized that I had a responsibility now, not just to myself, but to others who might be walking straight into the same trap. Hannah and her new life weren't just a personal tragedy anymore. They were part of a pattern. And now I had the evidence to start tearing it apart. I wasn't angry. I wasn't heartbroken. I wasn't even surprised anymore. I was something much more dangerous. I was prepared, and they had no idea what was coming. The next move had to be surgical. One wrong step and Hannah, her boyfriend, and their crooked agent could slip through the cracks. Mike and I spent 3 nights planning, talking on secure lines during the rare windows when I wasn't on patrol. Our first priority was locking down the refinance fraud. We needed proof that they had forged my signature to pull equity out of the house. If we could tie that back to Spencer and Hannah's boyfriend, we would have them not just for theft, but for conspiracy and wire fraud, serious federal charges. Mike arranged a meeting with the loan officer who had handled the refinance paperwork. Through a video call, I presented my military ID, my real signature, and the forged documents side by side. The differences were obvious. Wrong middle initial, different stroke pressure, sloppy attempts at mimicry. The loan officer's face went pale when he realized what he had approved. He promised to escalate the issue immediately. Within hours, the bank's fraud division opened a formal investigation, freezing the refinance proceeds before they could be withdrawn completely. It didn't end there. Mike filed a police report for identity theft and fraud. He also contacted the FBI's Financial Crimes Division, flagging the case because it involved VA loans and military families. 2 things the federal government didn't take lightly. It was like lighting a fuse. Suddenly, what had started as a personal betrayal exploded into a full-blown criminal investigation. Meanwhile, the private investigator kept digging. More ties emerged between Spencer, Hannah's boyfriend, and other suspicious real estate transactions. Families where the husband was deployed. Families who trusted too easily. Every new file he uncovered painted a clearer picture. This wasn't just an affair. It wasn't just a desperate woman making bad choices. It was a business. A cold, calculated business built on betrayal. At night, back in my bunk, I watched it unfold like a war map in my head. Every move they made, I was there, 1 step behind, then half a step, then breathing right down their necks without them even realizing it. The best part was, they still thought I was halfway across the world, helpless, broken, licking my wounds. They didn't know I was laying a trap around them so tight there wouldn't be an inch of room left to squirm. When the FBI called to set up an official interview, it felt surreal. Agent Patel, a woman with a calm, unshakable voice, explained that my case was key to establishing a pattern of criminal conspiracy. They had been investigating Spencer and his associates for months, but my situation tied everything together. The forged documents, the stolen funds, the manipulation of vulnerable families. They weren't just chasing a thief now. They were chasing organized fraud across multiple states. Before we ended the call, Agent Patel said something that stuck with me. "You're not just fighting for yourself anymore, Sergeant Cole. You're fighting for every soldier who left home trusting it would still be there when they got back." I sat there for a long time after the call ended, the tent quiet except for the low hum of the night generators. I thought about the other men, the ones who never even knew they were being robbed while they fought for something bigger than themselves. This wasn't just about Hannah anymore. This wasn't just about me. This was about making sure that when someone put on a uniform and said goodbye to their family, they didn't have to worry about being stabbed in the back before they even crossed the ocean. And if I had to burn down every lie, every forgery, every betrayal to make that happen, then so be it. The collapse didn't come all at once. It came in quiet, sharp jolts, like the first hairline cracks in a dam before it bursts. The first hit came when the refinance account was officially frozen. Without access to the money they were counting on, Hannah and her boyfriend started to panic. I knew because the security cameras caught it all. One afternoon, I watched from my laptop as Hannah paced the kitchen, her phone glued to her ear, frustration etched all over her face. The man, the one who had been living in my house, slammed a cabinet door so hard it nearly came off the hinges. Whatever dreams they had built on stolen money were crumbling fast, and they had no idea how deep the trap around them ran. The second blow hit even harder. The bank called to inform Hannah that a fraud investigation was underway. She had tried to move what little money was left in the joint account to a new one, but it was too late. Every transaction, every forgery, every suspicious transfer had already been documented and locked down. Mike forwarded me the notice they sent her, all funds frozen pending legal review. I imagined her face reading those words. I imagined the sinking realization that she wasn't in control anymore. And then the hammer fell. Jeremy, the boyfriend, was pulled over driving my truck. He still had a suspended license from prior DUIs, something he had conveniently failed to mention when he moved himself into my life. The police impounded the truck, and during the inventory search, they found something even worse: stolen prescription pads from the dental office where Hannah worked. It wasn't just about financial fraud anymore. It was about stolen controlled substances, federal crimes, prison time. Hannah and her boyfriend weren't just facing a lawsuit. They were staring down real, hard consequences, the kind you can't sweet-talk your way out of. Mike called me as soon as the police report hit his desk. His voice carried a rare note of satisfaction. "They're unraveling, Ethan. Fast." I didn't smile. I didn't celebrate. There was nothing joyful about watching the woman I had once loved fall apart under the weight of her own choices. But there was a grim sense of justice, a cold satisfaction in knowing that actions have consequences, even if it sometimes takes longer than it should. The FBI scheduled another meeting, this time to prepare formal charges. They had enough now: forged documents, fraudulent loans, identity theft, attempted property theft, drug-related crimes. It wasn't just about my house anymore. It wasn't just about my money. It was about a coordinated scheme that preyed on soldiers like me, and they were going to answer for it. Meanwhile, I kept watching. Every time Hannah tried to make a move, a phone call, a meeting, a frantic drive across town, I was a step ahead. She thought she was fighting invisible bad luck. She had no idea that the man she tried to erase was quietly, patiently pulling every string from halfway across the world. No yelling, no threats, no warnings. Just quiet, relentless justice. One night, after a long shift, I sat outside the barracks under the endless cobble stars, the desert air sharp and cold in my lungs. I thought about how easily I could have lost everything if I hadn't trusted my instincts. I thought about the quiet voice inside me that refused to play the fool. Hannah thought she had ended me with 3 cold sentences. But now she was the one trapped in a web of her own making, and the final reckoning was closer than she could possibly imagine. The day I returned to American soil, I didn't call Hannah. I didn't go home. I didn't even drive past the house that used to be mine. Instead, I checked into a motel under a different name and met Mike at a small diner on the edge of town. Over coffee and worn-out menus, he handed me a thick envelope full of documents, everything we had built during those long, sleepless months overseas. Bank records, forged signatures, security footage, police reports, FBI statements. It wasn't just a case file. It was a record of the truth, undeniable, unstoppable. 2 days later, the FBI raided the house. I didn't have to be there to know how it unfolded. I could picture it clearly: agents moving through my home, Hannah frozen in the doorway, watching the life she thought she had secured crumble under the weight of her own choices. Her boyfriend was arrested on the spot, cuffed and loaded into a black SUV without ceremony. Spencer, the crooked real estate agent, was picked up the same morning. Wire fraud, identity theft, conspiracy against military families. The charges stacked higher than either of them could ever climb out of. Hannah didn't go to jail that day. She wasn't handcuffed or dragged out in front of the neighbors. But she wasn't free either. The FBI opened a formal investigation into her role, and Mike made it clear if she wanted to avoid charges herself, she needed to cooperate fully, surrender any claim to the house, and pay back every stolen cent. No negotiation. No sympathy. In the end, Hannah signed everything. Full restitution. Full forfeiture. A signed confession admitting to the forgery. She lost the house. She lost the money. She lost the future she thought she had stolen. And I walked away clean, without ever having to raise my voice or waste another breath arguing with someone who had already made her choice long before I ever left for deployment. The divorce finalized 6 months after that first cold email in Kabul. No fault. No alimony. No lingering ties. Just 2 signatures and a heavy door swinging shut on a chapter of my life that had ended long before I realized it. When it was over, I packed up what little I had left, sold the house I could no longer stand to look at, and bought a small cabin outside of Missoula, Montana. 10 acres of peace. A creek running through the backyard. No neighbors for miles. Just me, the sound of the wind in the trees, and a German shepherd puppy I named Scout. Some days I built furniture for the locals. Other days I simply walked the trails behind my property, breathing in the kind of quiet you can't find in a war zone or a broken home. Sometimes, late at night, I thought about Hannah. About what could have been if things had been different. But the truth was, I didn't hate her anymore. I didn't love her either. She was just a scar now, a reminder of what I had survived and what I had overcome. A few months after everything settled, I received a letter from a woman in Fort Worth. Her husband had been deployed when Spencer and Hannah's boyfriend tried to run the same scam on her. Thanks to the FBI case built partly on my evidence, she kept her home. Her family stayed intact. At the end of her letter, she wrote, "You don't know me, but you saved our lives. Thank you." I pinned that letter to my fridge, right next to Scout's vaccination reminder. Every time the past tried to creep back in, every time the old bitterness threatened to rise, I looked at that letter and remembered, sometimes the battles you don't choose end up being the ones that define you the most. And sometimes walking away isn't losing. Sometimes it's the only way you win. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever fought a quiet battle of your own, I'd love to hear about it. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your story might inspire someone else who's still fighting their way forward. And if you enjoy real stories of resilience, strength, and quiet victories, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell. There are more stories coming, stories that remind us that no matter how hard we fall, we can always stand back up. Thank you for being here. Stay strong. Stay true. And remember, sometimes the quietest battles leave the strongest marks.